It is my pleasure now to welcome back all speakers from this event to join me for the panel Q&A session. So thank you everybody for your contributions to that session. It was really wonderful. And I would like to kick things off. Because this conference is digital and in a normal, a normal year or a normal 2 years as we're soon approaching, we may have tried to have done a symposium like this in person at Oxford. Digital learning has really kind of taken a stride in the last few years and we've reached new audiences. And I guess my question for all of us is, we know that there's amazing reach potential as seen, for example, with the SAPS course, which had 3,000 attendees, that's amazing. How do we get the balance right though, between reaching these new audiences with digital platforms and still bringing the physical plants in, because we know the impact that the physical plants has on people's engagement. Could I start with Jonathan?
Yes, you can. I think it's hybrid, isn't it? I think that's the answer that we're getting from education, is that we have to do both. What I think though is we have to do more talking to each other, and I actually think it's quite interesting looking at the questions that we've had. Not many questions in this session compared to the research sessions, and I'm just wondering if we need to do more. We need more joined up botanists, in the sense of all botanists should be thinking about education if they're researchers, and all education should be thinking about research if they're. So I think we need some kind of association of botanists in a way that will actually allow us all to be thinking about these issues. So it doesn't answer your question, but I think it is about communication at all levels. And then we can put together our different experiences. That's my thought.
What about you, Suzanne? What does the RHS think about the sort of digital and physical overlaps?
I think it's really interesting, isn't it? And I think we're all figuring it out as we go along. Really, I think we're not sure. We've gone through that the period of doing everything or most things on site, and then we were all forced into doing everything online. And now we're all trying to find what is that balance. And I don't think, I certainly don't have that answer yet, and I'm not sure anyone does yet, and we're all feeling our way. But I guess it gives us a lot of opportunity to kind of investigate that, and to now talk to all of our stakeholders, like schools and our visitors to our gardens, to see what they want. Because I know lots of people have found lots of the things that we've done online so much more accessible. I mean, you have, I assume you're now over 1,000 people signed up for this symposium. That's incredible. And the accessibility of that knowledge that would not have been available if it was an in-person event is brilliant. But at the same time, it's different audiences. So you're right. So for kids, that hands-on experience with plants will always be, just such an amazing thing. So bringing them to gardens where possible, but actually, it is great if they can't come. We found that we were reaching so many more schools when we did our teaching online during the pandemic. So I think it is, as Jonathan says, it's about finding that balance. And if anyone finds it, let me know.
I guess the same must be true for SAPS as well. You've done so many online and in-person events. You must have some wonderful data sets.
Well, it's a really interesting question, and I don't think there's a single answer to that question. I think different audience types like different types of ways of interacting. We did some really interesting work because of lockdown, where we did a train the trainer event. So that's trying to train the trainers of the future teachers, so working with initial teacher educators. And we actually did something a bit like a cook-along, where we had a bunch of teacher trainers dotted all over the UK, listening to our suggestions for some really exciting practical, like investigative ideas that you can use in the classroom, so they can relay those onto their trainees when they're back in their sessions. But they all did it from home. So I mean, Alex spent hours, days, weeks, possibly planning this. It was far more complicated and time consuming than just doing a bog standard face-to-face event. But actually, again, that accessibility was massively increased. And I think for us, often what we get a spark ignited at some of those events that we run. And what we're looking for is that meaningful moment where people are re-engaging with plants, particularly teachers and teacher trainers. And they've been teaching for such a long time. They're bogged down in the kind of standard stuff, and they're not actually able to excel and enjoy teaching the wonder that is plant biology or any elements of biology. So giving that opportunity, I think, whether that is online or remotely or hybrid, for that meaningful connection, I think is really important for the way that we want to work.
Definitely, thank you. And Suzanne, there's more of a targeted question for you here at RBGE. Reaching children about the importance of plants is very important. And I feel this works well for you because your nursery project, Our Wee Garden, is just wonderful. And the question is, what can gardens do to support adults who are parents and encourage them to motivate their children? And I feel your nursery project was just such a nice link here of how we can support parents. Can you think of any other ways that we can support parents to motivate their children to engage with plants?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things we were really aware of, was that when we were starting to talk with the nurseries, it was really important that we had the parents on board as well. So we did a lot of work with the nurseries to kind of educate the parents as to what was happening. And we're still working through that, to be honest, because there's definitely a gap in the kind of understanding. So, you know, we still have parent helpers turning up in trainers and, you know, white trousers, and they're going into a muddy field. And, you know, we're trying to educate them as we go along. But the other thing is, we've done some surveys with some of the parents as well, and they're very open and honest to the fact that they have a lack of knowledge and lack of understanding that they want help with. So I think there's a couple of things. One thing we're looking at is a possible parent and toddler event, so sort of group where parents come along with their children as early as possible, so that we start getting them on board early. The other thing is sort of parent and child workshops, where actually the older children can come along and do something together with their parents. So one of the things we're looking at is sort of a tea course, you know, so they could come along and with a herbologist make a sort of fruit infusion themselves, and then take it away. And it's something that they're actually working on together. So we're very aware that that is an issue, and we're trying to resolve it that way.
Fascinating. Jonathan?
Yeah, could I just add a couple of things? I think that's great what Suzanne's just said. But I think when we talk to people that like plants, very often they like plants because of their grandparents or their parents. So I think we mustn't forget that. Maybe we've lost that a bit in recent decades. But also you can view it the other way around, that excited kids going back, having experienced plants, can take some back into the home. And also just looking at the older level, I talked to students recently in relation to our Botanic University Challenge project that we're developing. And it's students like plants. I mean, I think we must be very careful, and I've done this myself a bit, just to assume that people, you know, all students are going to find plants boring. They're not. They are not. A lot of zoology and other professors might consider that students are going to find plants boring, and a lot of higher level academics, particularly in management, will say we can't have that plant degree because there aren't enough students. Well, I mean, in that sense, I think we need to be looking about the sort of plant animal microbe story. I think that's a really important point, that we're not necessarily looking for 70 million botanists, but we are looking for 70 million or lots of people who are aware that the plants are part of this amazing tapestry. And I think the ant plant talk was just a stunner of an example to remind us that, and also that could be used in education. So a few thoughts there garbled, but thrown in.
Yes, I must admit the ant plant is a favourite of mine to crack out when schools come, because it doesn't necessarily grab their attention if they are walking around the glass houses by themselves. And so being able to kind of pick up this unusual looking thing and tell this range of stories really does make them look at the plants that they would usually ignore, which is very powerful. Suzanne, I've got a question for yourself about qualifications. You mentioned the T levels, which were fascinating. And one listener or audience member is looking for advice on what you might recommend a young person should look for in order to have a career in horticulture, perhaps pre-T levels. What sort of starting route could they take before taking a T level, as it were?
That's a really good question. And I think T levels don't come with any particular entry requirements. So, and they, as I said, they're so broad that they give you the opportunity to have a taste of lots of different areas of horticulture. Same with apprenticeships, depending on where you go. And we know I mentioned in my talk that there are so many different areas of horticulture that you can go into. You can go into botany, or you can go into creative pursuits, or research or education, or journalism. So really, I would just suggest that people focus on what they're interested in. If they're interested in creativity and taking that into horticulture, that they study those things. It really is very individual, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think a general passion will be an excellent starting point, and exploring more of what they enjoy as well. I found the list of subjects that you put down as sort of, needing more skills, including soil science, fascinating. So I remember doing a soil science module at university and not really engaging with it at the time. It just wasn't for me. By contrast, my friend absolutely loved it, thought it was riveting. And it's such an important part of the sort of plant health system now that, yeah, you just go where your interests take you. Alex and Dan, I've got one for you guys. What do you think SAP's major achievement has been over the last sort of 3 decades? And what is your biggest challenge now to achieving your aims in the future?
We saw that question come in. I think I know who asked that question. So thank you, Jonathan. It's a really, really good question. SAPS has been going since 1989-ish, when a teacher approached the Gatsby Foundation to try and get some exciting ways to get more plants into the classroom. And ever since then, we've been very much based in the practical work area of trying to get more plant science into the school classroom through lots of really good plant science activities, not the bubbling pondweed that doesn't work, but the way of using pondweed that does work. The ways of getting really active and interesting ideas of using plants, so that initial kind of introduction to plants in the secondary classroom isn't a failure, or is something that engages young people. So some of our successes, I guess, I can't take credit for all of these by a long way, because I've only been part of the program for 10 years, but parts of the national curriculum and the specifications that followed on from that have got mention of specific activities that we've worked with teachers to develop over the years. Those are really workable examples. They're affordable, they're engaging, they work every time. Those are real successes that are core compulsory parts of the activities that teachers have to do now. And that's really a testament to those teachers that we've worked with over the years to develop some fantastic teaching ideas. I think some of the challenges that we face are to do with the way that the curriculum is assessed, that focus on content and not understanding, and that's far, far bigger than just for plant science. That goes across biology. But I think that's where some of the work that we're trying to do at the moment, that I mentioned in the video earlier, about helping teachers and the curriculum designers to see that plants can be used throughout biology to exemplify ideas, to demonstrate topics, to draw on a wider variety of living organisms through your compulsory biology teaching is a really important thing to do, because that will help people appreciate that plants have a significant place in the world and the way it works and the way we can use them to help solve some of those global challenges that have been discussed earlier. Alex, I don't know if you've got a few ideas that you might want to put forward there as well.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that point, that last point you were saying, that it's about developing well-rounded biologists as well, biologists who think about concepts and applying their biology knowledge to a biological problem, no matter what kingdom that is in. And so having examples from across different kingdoms really makes an impact there. Certainly thinking about those challenges on a practical level, one of the things we do a lot of is engaging with initial teacher education. And our understanding is, and there has been a move towards decentralizing that, and that our understanding is there's an expectation that might be further decentralized. So more school-based initial teacher education rather than based in higher education institutions. And that makes it really hard for us to reach those trainee teachers. It's there are a lot more pressures on those training situations. It's much harder for us to reach them. So on that sort of day to day getting our projects done level, that's tough, because we just, how do we get that information to the teachers who really want it and want to use it, but we can't contact them?
Yeah, interesting point, absolutely. We're coming towards the end, so I'd like to wrap up with one final question that's been submitted, which is, collectively, do you guys think that there's a fundamental problem within the curriculum not containing enough plant material, or is it more a problem that the material isn't being utilised correctly? Jonathan, do you want to start things off?
Well, I think I agree with that, but I think there are others that are better qualified. I mean, we looked into this for the symposium. We did a curriculum analysis, and Dan was quite right when he said that there's actually quite a lot of plants in the curriculum, but it might not be very interesting, or it might not be very well done, or the teachers may not feel confident to do it. And so I think there's lots of different ways, but there's no doubt. I mean, we have to do everything we can. And the stuff SAPS is doing is one very important element. Getting plants in the classroom, which is the topic of the video that I mentioned. You know, there are lots of different things we can do, but there is no doubt that it's more. Yeah, there is an issue of curriculum, and I do think this joining up of plants, animals, and microbes for the future. And I've talked with Dan about this before, I'm sure, with the SAPS group, that this is something that people are thinking about. In a way, that's more important, but there are lots of different ways that we need to be making the plants that are there more relevant, more interesting, more exciting, because we've seen from here, and we know it's preaching to the converted, but preaching to the unconverted, and showing the absolute fascination and how important the examples are to explain, you know, to seeing how plants cope with the same struggles, the same challenges that animals do, but they do it in very different, sometimes similar, but often very different ways, and that can be fabulous. So it's opening the door and using all the opening the window, but using lots of different approaches.
Does anyone have anything else they would like to add to that one before I draw us to a close?
Just quickly, if I may, I think they're really good points. It's almost an academic point, isn't it? Because we can say, yeah, we'd love more plants in the curriculum, we'd love horticulture as a GCSE, but the likelihood of that happening is very low. And we've been told that, you know, repeatedly by the government, and we can continue to lobby for that. And, you know, it would come with a lot of issues of its own that we would have to surmount and do a big promotion campaign on horticulture so that it became popularly taught and accessible to all levels of the students. But yeah, I think, you know, there is, as Jonathan and Dan have said, there is lots of scope within the current curriculum. We just have to take advantage of that currently.
Thank you. We've had some questions throughout this session that we just don't have time to get to today. If I could ask you guys to have a little look through them, and you can type your answers, and that will make it visible to the rest of the audience, that would be fabulous. It's now time for us to take a 10-minute break. Yes, we will be back at 7:20 with our keynote speaker for the evening, William Friedman. We'll see you soon. Thank you.